one more shot.
Amsterdam has got to be one of the most talked about cities in the world. But until visitors actually come here for themselves, it's hard to imagine it. Many people fall in love with its easy, relaxed attitude to life and return time and time again because, as well as being one of the world's top tourist destinations, Amsterdam City is known to be an area that lives by the live and let live motto. A visit to Amsterdam isn't complete without a boat cruise along the canals. They're a symbol of Amsterdam and of great cultural and historical value. The number of canals has led to Amsterdam being known as the Venice of the North. A canal tour can be both fascinating and relaxing by day and enchanting and romantic at night, when many of the houses and bridges are illuminated. With its maze of crisscrossing canals, it's no wonder Amsterdam has so many bridges, adding to its lovely cityscape. With at least 1,281 bridges dotting the city, many have a story to tell. Some are historic, some romantic, and a few are awe-inspiring feats of engineering. Romance, a single word that can conjure a myriad of images. But perhaps the most romantic experiences are the unexpected ones. Those with a mysterious quality you can't quite put your finger on. Amsterdam certainly has that something, an indescribable quality somewhere between quaint and exhilarating. Many of the houses lining Amsterdam's canals have a glorious past. They were homes to the wealthy, some were scenes of historic events, and nowadays they often shield beautiful gardens and museums. Drink on a terrace overlooking the water, or dine on a floating restaurant, and party like a local at one of the canal-oriented festivals during the summertime. For centuries, rivers have been the lifeblood of cities, and every European metropolis has a suitable ode to its main water source. Amsterdam is fortunate enough to have not one, but two major rivers. The Amstel, after which Amsterdam is named, and the Ij, which previously served as the harbour. The old centre was formed by rings of canals with unique, mostly 17th century residences of wealthy merchants, financiers, craftsmen, doctors, lawyers, politicians and artists. Due to lack of space, these houses were mostly narrow, not more than 9 meters. Step back in time and have a browse around a canal house or two during a visit to Amsterdam. Like in Venice, the canals were the main way of transporting goods. Amsterdam has more canals than Venice and more bridges than Paris. The plans for the grandiose Pont Alexandre III in Paris inspired the design of the Blauwbrug Bridge. The Blauwbrug's brick and sandstone foundations resemble a ship's bow. The marble lampposts also feature ship sculptures, as well as masks, ornate lanterns, and the imperial crown of Maximilian of Austria. Blauwbrug translates as Blue Bridge. This refers to the original wooden bridge that stood here, which was painted blue. The current bridge dates to 1884. One of the most impressive and important museums in Russia, the Hermitage, boasts a priceless art and antiques collection. As Amsterdam has a strong connection with St. Petersburg, the city is home to a branch of this dazzling museum. The outside of the building has hardly changed since it was unveiled back in 1683, a strong building standing proudly on the banks of the River Amstel. The Magere Brug, skinny bridge, is probably the best known bridge. It's a traditional double-leaf Dutch drawbridge connecting the banks of the River Amstel. This picturesque wooden drawbridge was built in 1670, and thousands of fairy lights romantically illuminate it at night. Legend has it that the bridge was named after the Magere sisters, who supposedly lived on opposite sides of the river. They're said to have had the wooden bridge built to make it easier to visit one another. However, Magere means skinny in Dutch, and it appears more likely that the original bridge acquired the name from being so narrow that it was hard for two pedestrians to pass one another. Approximately every 20 minutes, the bridge opens to let boats through. Skinny Bridge isn't too skinny anymore, but one of the most beautiful bridges in Amsterdam. The Amsterdam canals are impossible to miss on any trip to the city, and a Netherlands tour of the canals is a great way to see the city. Each area has its own personality and shows a different side of Amsterdam. Whether visitors are looking for modern architecture, a cultural hotspot, or an active excursion, there's something for everyone. The name Amsterdam is derived from Amstel Dam, indicative of the city's origin, a dam on the River Amstel, where Dam Square is today. Settled as a small fishing village in the late 12th century, Amsterdam became one of the most important ports in the world during the Dutch Golden Age, a result of its innovative developments in trade. During that time, the city was the leading centre for finance and diamonds. Amsterdam has more than 100 kilometers of canals, about 90 islands and 1,500 bridges. The three main canals, dug in the 17th century during the Dutch Golden Age, form a concentric belt around the city. Alongside the main canals are 1,550 monumental buildings. Much of the Amsterdam canal system is the successful outcome of city planning. In the early part of the 17th century, with immigration at a height, a comprehensive plan was put together, calling for four main concentric half-circles of canals with their ends resting on the Ij Bay. Known as the Belt of Canals, three of the canals are mostly for residential development, and a fourth outer canal for purposes of defence and water management. Although the city of Amsterdam began as a fishing village, it's grown over time to be the largest city in the Netherlands and one of the most densely populated cities in Europe. It goes without saying that Amsterdam has plenty of major sites and attractions to tempt visitors, such as its historical canal district and its world-famous museums. But that's not all. Just look around the corner to see the typical beautiful buildings along the canals. There's so much waiting to be discovered in this veritable city. The inner waters of Amsterdam are nowadays inhabited by some 2,400 families on houseboats. Of those 2,400, about 750 are moored within the 17th century canal system of downtown Amsterdam. There are concentrations in several parts of the canals, whereas other stretches are deliberately kept empty. Living on the water mainly came in vogue after the Second World War, when there was a housing shortage on one hand and a surplus of old cargo ships on the other. The Dutch cargo fleet was modernized in those days, and a lot of people saw a good opportunity for housing in the cast-off ships with their average length of about 25 meters. In the 60s and 70s, the boats were very colourful under the influence of flower power. Houseboats can be divided into two kinds, although Amsterdam also uses a third sub-kind. The first kind is the house ship, an old cargo ship where the cargo bay is refurbished to provide an addition to the small captain's quarters in the back of the ship. The vast majority of these ships were built in the first quarter of the 20th century, mostly out of steel or iron. The second houseboat style in Amsterdam is the house vessel. This type has the hull of an old ship, but here the original steering house and deck layout is completely removed to make room for a structure only meant to live in. Amsterdam's long history has resulted in a city that's today one of the most beautiful, welcoming and relaxed in the world. Nothing attests to the relaxed nature of the city and its beautiful set of waterways that make their way through the city itself and eventually spill out into the North Sea. Amsterdam's city centre is filled with history, still very much in evidence today. As a matter of fact, Amsterdam has more historic buildings and sites than any other city in the world, and most of them are located in the old centre, an area compact enough to traverse on foot. Thanks to its location at Ijssel Lake, the Amsterdam of long ago was a wealthy shipbuilding and trading port, requiring protection from enemies that might have otherwise tried to plunder the city. In order to protect it, walls were built around the city during medieval times. The Montelbaanstoren Tower, built in 1512, is a piece of the protective wall that still stands today, one of just a few small sections that remain throughout the city. The tower housed Amsterdam's military guards, stationed there in order to spy any approaching armies who may have been trying to take the city, making their way towards the port. City dwellers may be accustomed to the hustle and bustle of modern urban life, but that doesn't mean inhabitants don't need a momentary respite from their busy lives. Residents are particularly fortunate in that the city offers numerous spots for quiet reflection. There's a part of Amsterdam that never sleeps, Nieuwmarkt. In the middle stands Way House or Waag. Originally built in 1488, this characteristic monumental structure now houses In de Waag Restaurant Café. This magnificent historic building, with its constrained yet informal interior design, is lit by 300 candles, an ensemble that ensures a unique atmosphere. In 1601, the city walls were torn down to allow Amsterdam to expand further. St.Anthony's port remains standing, although it's now redundant. On either side, parts of the canals were filled in to create a square, St. Anthony's Market, since renamed Nieuwmarkt. Nieuwmarkt is one of the oldest parts of Amsterdam. Nieuwmarkt itself is actually a square in Amsterdam's Chinatown, next to the red light district. A daily market is still held here. Nieuwmarkt Square is dominated by the curious-looking building, the Waag. St. Anthony's Broad Street is a street in the centre of Amsterdam. The street runs south from Nieuwmarkt Square to the St. Antonius Sluice gates. The street was originally a dike, built to protect the city from flooding. Since the second half of the 17th century, the southern section of the street, south of the sluice gates, has been called Jewish Broad Street. In the 17th century, the street was popular with artists, such as the painter Rembrandt, who lived here. Today, the street is primarily a shopping street with a variety of specialty shops. The Nieuwe Kerk was the first Protestant church in Amsterdam. In its lifetime, the Nieuwe Kerk has served various functions. It was once a storage facility for Bibles, and during the starvation winter, during the Second World War, was also a mortuary. The church became the property of the Amsterdam Council in 1968 and was closed for a long time as the building structure required renovation. The building hasn't been used for church services since 1929, and it's now an information centre about construction projects. Think of Holland and a few iconic images immediately spring to mind: windmills, clogs and tulips. Amsterdam is famous for its flowers, and the floral industry is an important sector for the country. This floating flower market on one of the oldest canals in Amsterdam was first held in 1862. It's since developed into the best-known flower market in Holland. Merchandise ranges from traditional Dutch tulips and geraniums to delicate indoor cypresses and manabole plants from the Easter Islands. The ultimate image of the country is the tulip, Netherlands' most famous flower. For a long time, tulips have been a huge part of the Dutch culture. In the Netherlands, tulips are presented for any occasion, often complete with their own mythology and hidden meaning, depending on flower type and colour. There's no Dutch garden without tulips. There's no flower market in the Netherlands that doesn't have a variety of bunches of fresh tulips and tulip bulbs. Tulips aren't only an important part of the Dutch culture, but the country's economy as well. Dutch growers produce more than 9 million bulbs annually. Tulips came to Holland in the 16th century and rapidly became an attribute of wealth for the nouveau riche. A garden full of expensive tulips was a sign of prestige and social standing. The Singel Flower Market is one of the most colourful and fragrant places of interest in Amsterdam in all 4 seasons. It's unique in that the merchandise is displayed on floating barges. This is a relic from the days when the flowers and plants sold at this market were shipped in from the horticultural areas around the city by barges. Fresh flowers are still brought in every day. Mint Tower is a remnant of the Regulier Poort, which was built during the 15th century and is part of the old medieval city wall. The Regulier Poort consisted of a gate with a tower on each side. The tower was used to mint coins in the 17th century. After Munttoren Gate went up in flames in a 16th century fire, only the guardhouse and part of the western tower remained standing. The tower was rebuilt in Amsterdam Renaissance style, with a spire featuring a clock with 4 clock faces. By 1600, over half of all the ships sailing through the Sont had the Amsterdam market as their final destination. This business formed the backbone of Amsterdam's commercial success for hundreds of years. It gave rise to the golden age of the city, medieval Amsterdam was enclosed by a moat formed by the canals of Clovenia's Burgwal, Singel and Geldersekade. The weighing house at Newmarkt, the lower part of the Munttoren and the Weeping Tower are remains of the medieval city walls. Throughout the years, Amsterdam has established a reputation as one of Europe's foremost cities in terms of architecture and design. This reputation isn't only due to the picturesque 17th century rings of canals, but also to the modern architecture developing naturally between the facades of historical buildings. Amsterdam is a frequent destination for architecture enthusiasts, as the popular sites of interest are all easily accessible and represent a variety of architectural styles: classicism, historicism, Art Deco, and functionalism. Amsterdam is bursting with religious sites from a diverse cross-section of religions. The Old Church is both the oldest church and the oldest building in Amsterdam. It dates back to around 1250 and is incongruously located in the red light district. As early as the 13th century, a wooden chapel was built at the site of the Oude Kerk. It was soon replaced by a small stone church. The current Gothic structure dates back to the early 14th century, when it was built as a basilica. During the following centuries, the church was constantly expanded and its floor plan evolved into a cross shape. In 1330, when the church was dedicated to St. Nicholas, patron saint of Amsterdam, it was known as St. Nicholas's Church. After the Reformation, when the Protestants took power, they rechristened the church. It was named Oude Kerk to distinguish it from the new church on Dam Square. De Oude Kerk is an excellent example of the transition from a single-aisle church to a basilica. Currently a tourist magnet, De Oude Kerk has its share of cultural events, concerts, exhibitions, and even formal receptions. Several small 17th and 18th century houses lean against the church's walls. The tower, originally built in 1325, was increased in height in 1564, and the spire was added 1 year later, in 1565. The 47 clocks of the carillon, which were added to the spire of the Oude Kerk in 1658, chime at regular intervals. Amsterdam is famous for its vibrant and diverse nightlife. The secrets of the world's oldest profession are exposed on a walking trip through the narrow alleys and canals of the famous red light district. Amsterdam's squares are where much of the city's cultural and social life takes place. Dam Square is one of the main squares in Amsterdam, located in the historical centre of the city. Lively and busy, this place is attractive due to its notable buildings, sites and events. Swarms of locals and tourists are a normal sight on the square, both during the day and at night. In the centre of the square stands the Dutch National Monument, which was dedicated as a memorial to the victims of World War II and as a monument to liberation and peace. The figures on the 72-foot obelisk include 4 male figures, a woman and child, and 2 men with dogs, which represent war, peace and resistance respectively. The historical sites of Dam Square are definitely worth attention, especially the neoclassical Royal Palace, a majestic building that was home to the royal family in the 17th century. The Royal Palace on the Dam is one of the 3 palaces which the state has placed at the Queen's disposal by Act of Parliament. It's used mainly for official state functions. The square's beginnings date back to the 13th century, when at this site a dam on the Amstel River was built in order to prevent the waters from the southern sea from flooding the city. Its actual name is connected to the period of the 60s, when hippies used to meet at the square and have parties here. Since the 19th century, all sides of Dam Square were surrounded by land, which liberated space for the Zocher Stock Exchange, which was demolished later to be substituted again by the De Bijenkorf department store. Nowadays, Dam Square is a place featuring social and cultural events as well as intense nightlife. Another attractive site is the Gothic New Church, known for its interesting architecture. Adjacent to the Royal Palace, the church is one of the highest order. Akin to the Gothic churches of France, it was built around 1400 due to the shortage of churches in the city, and over the years many changes have been made. The new church remarkably managed to escape major damage in the 15th century, the 2 great fires of Amsterdam, although 2 centuries later it was reduced to ashes when workmen accidentally started a fire. The church, however, has been faithfully restored to its former glory, exhibiting the original early Renaissance-style features throughout. In between coronations and weddings, the new church houses art galleries and temporary exhibitions. Apart from its tumultuous history, the outstanding interior itself is a sufficient reason for a visit. It has 2 organs, the main organ, which takes up the entire west wall, and a smaller one. Standing on the organ is King David with his harp, together with women depicting the arts of singing and playing music, while the painted panels beneath show David's anointment as king. the decorations all relate to music. Music is also a recurrent theme in the other decorations, such as in the relief under the organ, which includes the symbols of Amsterdam. Amsterdam's the Nieuwe Kerk is famous for celebrating treasures from other countries, cultures and religions in its much talked about exhibitions. The church is one of the most highly attended exhibition locations in the Netherlands. Amsterdam also has a strong religious heritage, particularly with respect to Calvinism and Judaism. Though religion is on the decline in Amsterdam, like much of Europe, the city's rich religious heritage is reflected in the many churches and synagogues that are well worth a visit. Amsterdam also boasts an abundance of excellent religious art and an entire museum dedicated to the Bible. The religious life of the city developed on a large scale. At the end of the 15th century, there were more than 20 monasteries in Amsterdam, only one of which, however, the Begijnhof, has survived the Reformation in its original form. Of the churches and chapels, the so-called Holy Room is the most famous, as the scene of a great sacramental miracle, the Miracle of Amsterdam. It was a place resorted to by countless pilgrims, among others by the Emperor Maximilian, and the street which led to it is still known as the Holy Way. The Reformation reached Amsterdam quickly. The city remained Catholic for longer than the rest of the Netherlands, until 1578. Directly behind the Queen's Palace on Dam Square stands an elegant 19th century building, now one of the few shopping malls in Amsterdam, the Magna Plaza. Magna Plaza was designed in neo-Gothic style by a Dutch architect at the end of the 19th century. The Magna Plaza building was originally Amsterdam's central post office, so the architect followed the mood of the period, giving it several crowned Gothic towers and a rich late Gothic ornamental facade. The building was a technological wonder of its time. Built on 4,650 piles stuck in the muddy ground, it had a huge main hall, galleries hanging above it, and a lot of natural light through the huge windows and a glass roof. It was an important place in the life of the city, not only as a post office. Throughout the year, Amsterdam is one of Europe's foremost architectural and design cities. Amsterdam is where modern architecture developed organically between the facades of historical buildings. Since it's not a very big city, all sites of interest are within acceptable distance. This is why Amsterdam is so popular with lovers of architecture. The Spui is the cultural book square of the Netherlands, with a high-quality weekly book market and a wide variety of bookstores on or near the square, including 2 shops dedicated to English language literature. Visiting open-air markets is one of the best ways to soak up authentic culture in a travel destination. Amsterdam's markets are alive with colour, the various cultural products, smells and sights that define its local flavour. It's the best way to discover the village atmosphere of the city's neighbourhood markets, most of which are open all year round, rain or shine. It's the canals and bridges, the city's rich history, the cultural offerings, the congenial neighbourhoods with cafes and antique shops, or the municipal parks that are enough to confound the senses. It's also the liberal character of the city, where it doesn't matter what your skin colour, religion, or sexual orientation is. All of this makes Amsterdam so unique. Begijnhof is one of Amsterdam's best-known almshouses. It consists of a group of houses built around a secluded courtyard and garden, which provided modest homes for the Beguines, a group of unmarried religious women who lived together in a closed community under vows of chastity. In later centuries, various alterations were made to the houses in the Beguinage. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the wooden facades were changed, though 18 houses do still have their Gothic wooden frame. Some houses have also been demolished and rebuilt, like for instance the gatehouse leading to the Spui and the presbytery. The Begijnhof Chapel once held the miracle of Amsterdam, and the story is portrayed in the beautiful stained glass windows. The women who lived here weren't nuns, and nor did they live in the seclusion of a convent. They had no founders and didn't make lifelong vows. They did have to be unmarried and to take a vow of chastity and to promise obedience to the parish priest. But since they weren't expected to make a vow of poverty, they were free to dispose of their own possessions. They could renounce their vows at any moment and leave the Beguinage, for instance to get married. Visiting a city isn't usually seen as a green-friendly activity, nor are cities seen as typically environmentally friendly places. But Amsterdam can surprisingly bridge that gap. Voted one of the greenest cities in Europe, Amsterdam is an attractive destination for the environmentally conscious. Trees, ponds and flowers surround you, and the sounds of the city are far away. There are over 30 parks in Amsterdam, including Vondelpark, which attracts some 9 million people each year. In the 14th century, a group of prominent locals formed a committee to found a public park. They raised money to buy 8 hectares of land, and the architect Zocker was commissioned to design the park as an English landscape. They used vistas, ponds and pathways to create an illusion of a natural area. The park was open to the public as a horseback riding and strolling park named Nieuwe Kerk. The name Vondelpark was adopted when a statue of the Dutch poet Joost van den Vondel was put up in the park. In the middle of the park is the Blauwe Tea House, a pavilion built in 1937, which especially in the summer attracts the young and hip. With a capacity of 700, this is one of the largest terraces in the country. The park is located right in the centre of the city, and so it's easily reachable from all corners of Amsterdam. It's open both for the local citizens and also for visitors coming from all corners of the world. On warm days, Vondelpark is a favourite spot for picnics, barbecues and private parties. It's also the place where smoking a joint and drinking a beer in the open is tolerated, providing you don't disturb others. As the gates of the park stay open during the night, the fun can continue till late by candlelight. Many locals come to Vondelpark to enjoy a multitude of physical activities in the open air. You'll be surprised by the large number of runners one encounters in all types of weather. No wonder Vondelpark is included in the official route of the Amsterdam Marathon, one of the 10 most prominent marathons worldwide. With more than 50 museums, compact Amsterdam packs a big cultural punch. From world-famous collections to lesser-known hidden treasures, Amsterdam's museums offer art, history, the unexpected and the unusual. Amsterdam's Van Gogh Museum houses the largest collection of paintings by Vincent van Gogh in the world. It provides the opportunity to keep track of the artist's developments or compare his paintings to works by other artists from the 19th century. The museum's permanent collection includes paintings, drawings and letters. In addition to work by Van Gogh, the museum has a rich and varied collection of other 19th century art. The artists represented include Impressionists, Post-Impressionists and others, such as those who inspired him and those who drew inspiration from him, and also Van Gogh's friends and contemporaries. Amsterdam is an international harbour city with a vast array of cultural venues. It's a place where the architecture is diverse, where the museums and art galleries are plentiful, and where the music scene hosts numerous festivals which are popular among visitors from all over the world. The large I Amsterdam letters at the Museumplein in front of the Rijksmuseum have fast become an icon of the city and are a much sought after photo opportunity. Built in 1876, according to a design by the architect Coopers, Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum is the largest museum in the Netherlands. It features a famous collection of works by Rembrandt, Vermeer and Frans Hals, as well as Delftware, sculpture, Asian art and prints. The interior and exterior of the building were richly adorned with references to Dutch art history. The Rijksmuseum has an extensive cultural history collection, which includes paintings, ship models, sculptures, archaeological artifacts, clothing, weapons, historical prints and photographs. The hundreds of thousands of items from the past collectively give a visual account of Dutch history within a global context. A visit to the extraordinary districts around the centre is certainly something not to be missed. Each area has its own personality and shows a different side of Amsterdam. Whether visitors are looking for modern architecture, a cultural hotspot or an active excursion, there's something for everyone. Walking in the city districts is the best way to discover the different sides to Amsterdam. Established 8 centuries ago as a small fishing village, modern Amsterdam is a bustling metropolis and a major European capital. Millions of tourists flock here every year to experience the famous liberal spirit of the city and admire the dense network of charming canals to which Amsterdam owes its nickname of the Venice of the North.